Hello everyone. This video explains some of the most basic marketing metrics and how to calculate them. And we're going to look at 4 different metrics: percentage growth, return on investment, profit margin, and break even. So how to calculate percentage growth? Percentage growth is a ratio between the changes in sales versus the sales level before. Basically, the unit sales or dollar sales after minus the sales before and then divided by the sales before. And this will give you a percentage value. And one thing to be careful about is that the denominator is going to be the sales level before. It's not the sales level after. Here's an example. Apple sold 232 million iPhones in 2024 and 40 million iPhones in 2010. So what percentage did iPhone unit sales grow between 2010 and 2024? So if you look at these numbers, 232 million, this is the unit sales after, and 40 million, this is the unit sales before. It will enter the equation in 2 places. In order to calculate the percentage growth, we have percentage growth equals 232 minus 40 divided by 40 times 100%. And the result is 480%. So the conclusion is between 2010 and 2024, iPhone sales has grown 480%. The second metric is return on investment or return on marketing investment. These are usually abbreviated as ROI or ROMI. So the calculation here is that it's the actual profit generated from the investment minus the cost of the investment divided by the investment, and then times 100%. So what can be said here is that if the actual profit generated is smaller than the cost of investment, the numerator would create a negative value, which basically means that the investment you put in is not worthwhile because it generates less dollar value than the investment you put in. And a couple things to be aware of. First is that the profit terms here, it needs to be the actual profit generated from the investment, and it must be attributable to the investment. It's not the total profit, it's the delta, the actual profit. And second is that the cost of investment in the marketing context can be in different forms. So it can be advertising, it can be promotions, it can be many other forms of marketing spending. Whatever the spending that we focus on, it will yield the return on that specific form of investment. Here's an example. A Facebook ad costs 1 cent for each time the ad is shown to a user. This is what we call an impression. So the expected number of impressions is 40,000 per month. After running the Facebook ads, the business has seen its profit increased by $500 per month. So, what is the average monthly ROI of showing the ad on Facebook? The calculation of ROI here is as follows. So here, 500 is the actual profit generated from running the ad. So it comes here. And the total cost or the total investment here is 40,000 impressions at 1 cent per impression. So that would be 1 cent times 40,000. This gives you $400. And also that term appears at the denominator. So what we get is basically $100, which is created by 500 actual profit minus $400 investment. So 100 and divided by the $400 investment. And that gives us 25% ROI, or return on investment. Profit margin. This is a straightforward calculation. Profit margin is simply the difference between price and the variable cost. Here's the example. An original iPhone cost $200 to manufacture and was sold for $600. What was the profit margin? So the profit margin is simply $600 minus $200. That gives us $400. And finally, break-even. Break-even describes a condition where a business makes zero profit. That is, the business neither makes money nor loses money. Here I'm going to give you the full formula for calculating profit. So the profit is equal to price minus variable cost. Mind you that this is basically the profit margin, times the demand. And then with that number minus the fixed cost equals to 0. That gives us break even. So if you have not learned about the concept of variable cost versus fixed cost, put briefly, variable costs are the costs that change with the number of units produced or sold, which basically means and each additional unit incurs a cost. So that kind of cost would be your variable cost. Most commonly, this would be cost of goods sold, things such as material cost or cost of service. On the other hand, fixed cost does not vary by the demand or units sold. So this is most commonly, for example, leasing a workshop or running an advertising campaign. So these things usually don't change on a unit-by-unit basis, but instead it's a fixed part of the cost that business incurs. So back to break-even. So basically we have this formula of profit. Break-even means the profit at the end of the day is 0. Here's an example. An original iPhone cost $200 to make and sold for $600. The cost of developing and marketing an iPhone, fixed cost here, was $100 billion. How many iPhones does Apple have to sell in order to break even? So let's put the numbers into the formula. Here, the profit is equal to the price of $600 minus the variable cost of $200 times the demand, which we don't know at this point, and minus $100 billion of fixed cost. And to break even, this profit is 0. Now, once we have this formula, there's only one unknown, that is demand. We can easily calculate the break-even demand level is equal to $100 billion, the fixed cost, divided by the profit margin of $600 minus $200. And that gives us 250 million units. So in order to break even, Apple has to sell at least 250 million units of iPhone. Now let's look at a different scenario. What if Apple drops the price to $400? Now the profit formula becomes $400 minus $200, so the profit margin drops. At $400, we can calculate the break-even. Apple must sell $100 billion, the same fixed cost, divided by 400 minus $200. Apple must sell 500 million units in order to break even. In other words, when Apple dropped the price from $600 to $400, the number of units needed to break even doubled. That's all for this lecture. Thank you, and keep up the good work.